folks. My name is Larry Clark, if you don't know me already. I'm with Equity Colorado Real Estate. And this is episode number, I don't know, of the Mature Living Truth Seminars. I've never counted. All I can do is remember, maybe I started in 2017, somewhere in that range. We've transitioned from a physical program, physical panels, physical appearances, and seminars to Zoom. I thought by now we'd be back in person. I was mistaken. It appears for the near term, we'll be doing this for a while. You may be wondering, today's topic is advanced care planning, or some people call it advanced care directives. You may be wondering why a real estate agent would be hosting an event on this subject. Well, guess what? Real estate agents are mortal too. I know this is an important topic, and the knowledge will make me and my family more secure knowing we have a plan just in case something happens to me. Our goal is to help and equip you and empower you with both information and resources so that you can effectively plan for your ultimate exit from life as well. Our guest today is the most knowledgeable person I know in the area of advanced care planning. Following the interview, you will have an opportunity to ask questions of our guest as well. So write down your questions as you think of them and try to hold them until the end. Although, you know, this is a small group. If it's a pressing issue and need to answer right away, you can always just chime in and we'll accommodate you. I'm going to be recording this interview and posting it on YouTube. With that said, I have to actually do that. Hit record.
Looks like you are recording, Larry.
Am I recording already?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. So,
So
I'll have to edit out that first half
edit
an
out
hour.
chit chat. Yeah.
All right, Sue, would you please introduce yourself to the audience? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and your company.
Okay. Hi, everybody. And Larry, thank you. I love that you do this series, and I love the name Mature Living. There's so many other ways you could say that wouldn't be as pleasant and inviting as Mature Living. So people, my business is called Out of the Box End of Life Planning. And I've been doing this in different forms for about 15 years. People ask me all the time, how did you get into this? I assure you that when I was 12 years old, I didn't dream of being able to help people with their end of life planning, but it's something that just kind of evolved over time. I was involved in a program at Naropa and Contemplative End of Life that was relatively life-changing for me. Part of that program was that I was supposed to write my advanced directives. And I very much believe in everyone should have their planning done and have their advanced directives in writing. 5 years after that class ended, I realized I hadn't done it yet. I found it, on the bottom of that pile next to the computer that I just never got to, and realized that it was because I didn't feel equipped to be able to answer the questions and address the different issues around end of life planning. Like, what did I know as a layperson? So I began to just educate myself on anything that was out there, books and workshops and such, till I got to the point where I felt comfortable. Like, okay, I can sit down and I can figure out who my medical power of attorney is and how I should answer the questions in a living will, etc. And realize that there are lots of people who are in the same boat. We avoid doing this planning for lots of different reasons, one of which, as Larry mentioned, having to face our mortality. It's a practical thing to do, but it's emotional, and also in that, you have to face the fact that you might not exist one day. Or for some, even worse, that we might be debilitated and unable to take care of ourselves at some point in time. And none of us want to really think about that. But my experience has been that when people do think about it and they do the planning, it is like having a giant weight lifted off your shoulders. It's like you've thought about it, you've gotten used to saying the D word, death. You you made some peace, you've changed your way of looking at things, and then you can move on with your life in a more, I think, a more joyful way. In the acknowledgement that time is limited, and so we got to make the best of it as we go, right? So that's how I got into doing this. I was helping people with their advanced planning, and then I started helping people with their funeral planning. And everywhere I went, people would ask, okay, but so I know I need to do those two main things, but what else? So then I developed what I call an exit file, which is a notebook or binder that is a place to put all of that stuff that will help your medical power of attorney, your general power of attorney, and your executor or personal representative at whatever point they have to step in and take care of things for you. So it's a place to consolidate, your paperwork, your passwords, your will, your insurance papers, and your wishes and your funeral preferences, etc. So that's kind of like my signature thing, is helping people with their exit files. But today we're just going to focus, excuse me, on the advanced care planning piece. As Larry inferred, there's a lot of different terminology that you hear: advanced care planning, healthcare planning, healthcare directives, it's advanced care directives. Sometimes it's called the living will. What's involved in that piece of our planning, which is wanting to assign someone to make our decisions for us if we can't, and relay our wishes around how we would like to be treated or not treated at the end of life. Whatever documentation you compile around that subject matter is your advanced care plan. And then we like to also include your funeral preferences in that advanced care plan. A lot of times people will have their attorney will draft in their will what their what their preferences are for funeral, if they want cremation or burial, or where they want their ashes spread, or that kind of thing. If it ends up in the will itself only, it may not be seen until after everything's over with. And I think it was Teddy Roosevelt who was very, very clear. He wanted simple, quick, no big deal, and he had it written in his will in his safe, which nobody opened until they'd already done a 2-week-long wake and memorial and a lot of hoopla and extravaganza and everything that he didn't want. So your funeral, whatever funeral arrangements you may make choices around, or any wishes you have around that, should be included in your advanced care planning, your medical planning, because as you may be declining and you may be having your medical power of attorney stepping in to help you with decisions and such, they're the ones that then will be faced with your body and what to do with it next. So does that make sense? I hope.
Right.
So if someone doesn't have a plan, where would you start? I once spent like 3 hours with a group talking about, all the different pieces of this that you can put together. And at the end of it, one guy raised his hand and he says, I just want to know what's the very least I have to do. So we all come from different places. Some of us are super detail oriented and some want that, what's the very least? In answer to that question, the very least that you have to do is create a medical durable power of attorney. And that means choosing the person who you trust with your very life to step in and make decisions for you if you're incapacitated to the point where you can't make your own decisions medically. This is just a medical person, medical decisions. And so that person needs to know you really well. You need to have had lots of conversations with them around what you would prefer in certain kinds of circumstances, how you define quality of life. And you have to trust that this person will be able to set their own personal belief system and their value system aside and put themselves literally in your shoes or in your hospital bed and answer the questions around treatment and such as if they were you. So, as far as who would write this plan?
Yeah. Yeah, who can help? I'd be curious as to who you'd recommend can help a person with a plan.
I don't want to like publicly diss attorneys. They're fabulous for what they're good at, which is doing your will or trust or whatever. And your general power of attorney, helping you decide the details around that, which is the the other power of attorney that you need, who will handle your finances for you, obviously separate from your medical decisions. But they usually include, when they do an estate plan, they will include your medical directives, your advanced care planning. So they'll fill out the forms for you for choosing your medical power of attorney, and the living will piece, as in how you would want, what kind of level of treatment you would want if you were incapacitated. They do not have, they're not in touch with what actually happens in the medical world. I've seen living wills or advanced directives, excuse me, that are 12 pages long and very eloquent, written in legalese that no one can understand, but addressing lots of different topics like dementia and such that we do need to consider our feelings about. But it's not written in languaging that actually applies to a medical situation. Any of you who've ever been in a hospital with someone in critical care know that you could never predict what kind of decisions would be placed before you, depending on the particular circumstances. So my my preference, if you didn't come to me, I would say anyone who specializes in advanced care planning, the Conversation Project, and that's conversationproject.org. They're a national organization, also with a really strong component in Boulder. And they have volunteers who will help you with just that one piece, choose how to choose your person, your agent or medical durable power of attorney, and would help you get at least that one piece done. But absolutely everyone over the age 18 should have a medical power of attorney chosen and the form medical durable power of attorney completed.
Quick question, Sue. Are the forms in real estate, all forms are approved by the state of Colorado?
Mm-hmm.
In your field, are the forms approved or not?
Oh, good question. We do have an official Colorado MDPOA form, medical durable power of attorney form, and that can be found online by a quick search, or I can certainly send it to you, Larry, and you can distribute it. And it can be filled out completely on your own if you feel like you can answer the questions appropriately. It's straightforward, but it's good to really spend some time considering who the appropriate players would be, who's local and could be available to you, who's got the personality type, I guess, to navigate the medical system and actually question the doctors, who can navigate family discord if people aren't in agreement and such. So it's good to have some guidance around how to choose that person before you fill out the form. And so I do that. I have several friends who do it, and the Conversation Project also offers that as a service.
Okay.
But that being said, there's a gazillion different versions of the forms. Every attorney has their own version. And then there's the Colorado State super simple, straightforward forms. That's my preference, because I think I've seen in the hospital, I used to be on the ethics consult team for several years at Boulder Community, and they just want the bottom line. They don't want to sort through 6 pages, 12 pages of information. They want to know who's the one who's going to make the decisions for you. That's the main thing.
Okay, do you have any anecdote stories about people who do their planning?
I do know that, I don't know this person personally, but there was a situation with a woman who had cancer, and was very close with her daughter who lived nearby. They spent a lot of time together. They knew each other very well. The mother was older and decided she did not want to spend the rest of her days going through chemo and being compromised and being sick and stuff. And she decided she did not want chemo and that she was going to let the disease progress and allow what we call allowing a natural death, a natural dying process without intervention. And, but she didn't put any of it in writing. She did have the conversations, which is huge, with her daughter, but she didn't put it in writing. And she also had a son. The son lived out of state and hadn't been to visit his mom for a couple of years. And he flies in when he finds out mom's got cancer, and all hell broke loose because he accused his sister of trying to kill their mother by not allowing her to have chemo. And because at this point now the mom's not cognizant and able to speak for herself. So the daughter stepped in, was keeping the doctors at bay, and it was a horrible scene with, you know, the son not knowing what the mother's wishes were. And had she put it in, at least put it in writing, there would have been some level of backup for the daughter to say, you know, this is what mom wanted. I'm just honoring what it is that she wished for. So yeah, an example. Another place where it can get very sticky is if you're in a second marriage with stepkids and all that. As you might imagine, the spouse may know the person very well and might be their spokesperson, but then the grown children step in and say, who are you to be making the decisions for my mother? You know, she's my mother. I should be the one making the decisions. And I know she, you know, and if the conversations around what's wanted haven't been consistent between the spouse and the kids, there's sadly a step-parent situation is rife, can be rife with discord like that. So again, having things, your thoughts and feelings on paper is key. Trying to prevent that.
Okay. So I'm curious about funeral planning. And why is it important? A lot of people in this directive just say, I want to be cremated.
Right.
But that doesn't give the family any clues as to what else should occur or not occur.
Right. So yeah, it's a great question. I think a lot of people, well, again, they don't want to go there, right? So there's this cute cartoon of a mom and a daughter sitting in the living room talking, and the daughter is saying to the mom, "Mom, I think we should talk about, you know, what you would want, not if, but when something happens. Would you want burial or cremation?" And the mother looks at her with her arms across her chest and says, "I don't know, surprise me." And that it's not helpful. I can tell you that having any guidance, even as just as much as cremation or burial or green burial, or now we've got, you know, alkaline hydrolysis, water cremation, and we've got natural organic reduction, which is body composting. There's lots of different options out there. As a fellow board member with Larry on the Funeral Consumer Society, I feel extremely strongly about people doing their planning ahead of time. We generally advise people not to prepay for anything, but to pre-plan. So do your homework, find out what the options are around where you live. It does not have to be in your town, but it would behoove any of us to physically walk into the different mortuaries that are around and talk to them, find out how they handle you, how you feel being there, and comparing their pricing, which can be extremely variant. Cremation in Denver can run, I've seen as low as $650 for cremation, for direct cremation, which is simple, just like they take the body, cremate it, and you get back the ashes, but up to over $4,000 for the very exact same thing. You know, extra cost is warranted if there's extra service, but if it's just a direct cremation, it's really good to do the shopping ahead of time. So I try to help direct people to an appropriate, a good fit for them for mortuary or crematory. And then just get that in writing. It doesn't, you don't have to pay for it ahead of time, but write it down in your paperwork so that somebody knows that you've done some shopping around and you really, your preference would be the natural funeral in Lafayette. And here's the pricing you got at the time. And then, you know, we've all been to enough funerals and memorial services, I think, to have some thoughts around how you might want to be memorialized, if you'd like a luncheon or a big blowout celebration or something quiet. And maybe if you're cremated, where you might want those ashes scattered or stored or distributed or whatever. Music that you might be meaningful to you, any kind of readings that might be meaningful to you. You don't have to plan the whole thing out, but anything that you write down and pass on to your family, guarantee you, they will thanking you for eternity, because it just makes the process so much easier. You know, when the family's in shock and grief, if that's not the time to make these decisions. And sadly, the funeral industry will even admit that people spend a lot more money if they're like at the time of need and suddenly faced with having to make the plans and make the decisions, and they'll just say yes, yes, yes to things because they were asked and not because it was a well thought out. That makes sense. So
we want to mention our database.
yes, yeah, on funeralconsumercolorado.org. It's consumer singular, funeralconsumercolorado.org. That's the website for the Funeral Consumer Society of Colorado. And there's a tab on there that says price survey. And that price survey is current pricing for, well, we're not fully done, but for almost all of the funeral establishments in the state. And so you can sort that list by city or by county. And I would definitely not limit yourself to just your city, expand out maybe county-wise. And you can see the variance in prices. Phone numbers are there, websites are there, and you can do your research starting from using that price survey. It'll get the process going for you. Yeah, Larry and I have been working on that. We're almost there.
Well, not the two of us. We had other people.
Yeah, and other people. Yeah, yeah.
We were 5 or 6.
So
Okay, so let's get back into the planning, and maybe take a deeper dive into what.
Larry, I'm losing your
Uh-oh.
Oh, there you are. You're back.
What happened there?
You're back.
I am back?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not back on my screen, but oh, there I am there. Okay. Whew. Uh-oh, my computer is doing a little something weird there. I hope it holds together. Also, what about, do you see anything on the screen that's going, Sue?
Everything looks normal to me.
Okay, good. All right, just my screen is going berserk. Okay, I'm going to assume, just holler at me or call me. If we get disconnected, definitely call me.
Okay, okay.
What does the comprehensive plan consist of? Documents notarized, signed, stored in a certain fashion?
I didn't hear part of that, but I think
Okay.
you're asking about,
What does a comprehensive plan consist of? Do the documents have to be notarized, signed by whom, for the formalities of these documents?
the only thing that's actually formal is the medical power of attorney form and the living will form. So the medical power of attorney form, you can actually sign and date yourself today, and it's legal. But it's recommended that it be witnessed and notarized. On the back, it says it's optional, but it's recommended that you do go ahead and witness and notarize if possible, especially if you travel at all, because other states require notarization. And there's just something that makes it just look more, it looks more official, even though I'll tell you, as a notary, it's kind of nonsense in my opinion, because all I'm doing when I put a notary stamp on your document is saying that you are you, that I looked at your driver's license. It doesn't mean that, the documents thoughtfully planned or anything like that, but not a bad idea to do it. The living will requires 2 witnesses, and notary is optional on that also. If you're going to get anything notarized, you might as well just do the whole shebang. It usually doesn't cost anything. The only piece of the advanced directives that's actually legally binding is that medical power of attorney form. The hospitals and such are legally required to honor whatever the power of attorney decisions are. The living will form looks very legal, but in reality, it's only legal protection is for the doctors, that if they follow the living will, what you said in the living will, they're protected against malpractice and such. But they aren't necessarily required to follow to the letter what you put in your living will. Then there's other paperwork that you can add to your documentation. I really prefer for people to write a personal narrative or a my wishes statement that's in your own words that says, you know, I've lived a good, however you would word it for yourself. I've lived a good life. I don't want extraordinary treatments. Especially if I have dementia, this is just an example. If I have dementia, please don't treat any underlying illness. Allow me a natural death. Any feelings about being sick and being how you'd be cared for? Do you want the room bright with the windows open, or do you like it dark and cozy? Do you want the TV on for company, or do you absolutely not want the TV on under penalty of death? Any kind of thoughts you have around how you would envision things to go for you at the end of life, you can put that out, write that out in a narrative form and include that with your directives. It's not legally binding, but it's majorly good guidance for your caregivers and your decision makers, and could be used as backup if there was contention between what the medical personnel want to do with you and what the decision maker is deciding. They could bring that paperwork to them and say, hey, she went to the trouble to write this out. She's got dementia. I know she does not want a feeding tube under these circumstances, so we're not going to do that.
Okay. I've always been confused. I have the MDPOA, which is the medical power of attorney, but the doctor doesn't. I mean, and let's assume my wife were incapacitated and I was incapacitated. The doctor wouldn't have any idea. So how do you communicate your wishes to the medical profession?
That paperwork, so Larry, I'm still you're kind of cutting in and out volume-wise. But I think what you're saying is if you were incapacitated, if you and your wife were in a car accident together and you're each other's power of attorney, how would the doctors know what you wanted? We always recommend having an alternate power of attorney. So, because it's not uncommon for your first pick to not be available for whatever reason. So you should have an alternate, and then ideally an alternate. Sometimes people have a hard time coming up with just the one person. But if you can have alternates, that will help. And then having that backup paperwork with your wishes written out, and making sure that, say, your local hospital has copies of that uploaded into your electronic record, that would give guidance. So having a lot, as much as possible in writing, would give some guidance to the physicians. It wouldn't mean that they're legally bound to follow your wishes, but they would be ethically bound, I believe, to follow your wishes.
Okay. But there's no rule that an attorney has to prepare a document.
Okay, I think you asked if it's a fallacy that an attorney has to prepare all this. Yeah, an attorney does not have to prepare it. In fact, it's been not like in a research way, but it's evidential that families who are bedside with someone who's critically ill, if they are looking at an attorney drafted advance directive that's all in legalese, and it's just like say their mother just signed it, they'll question sometimes, was this really what mom wanted, or was she just signing all the pile of papers that she was signing when she did her estate planning? Right. If it's written out in your own words, there's a lot more power to it. Yeah, well, it's taken a lot more seriously.
All right, so big question, how much planning goes beyond the simple estate plan?
So a lot of people feel like when they go to the attorney and they do their estate, first of all, estate planning, sometimes that term turns people off because they feel like, well, I don't have an estate, I just have my little bank accounts or whatever. You still have possessions and finances. So don't be turned off by that term estate. You should go to an attorney to have your will and general power of attorney done. Unless it's super simple, then there are online options for doing that. As far as the medical piece of it, that can be really done on your own or with some support from a professional advanced care planner. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, medical, including funeral stuff.
Yes. Yep.
Informal.
Yep.
Okay. What about my current plan? How do I know if my current plan is sufficient and will work?
Okay, Larry, I didn't catch that.
Okay, I apologize. This is my computer. I have no visual screen of the Zoom.
Oh, goodness.
It's more than just you and I, Sue.
Oh, okay. No,
I can't see anything. And plus my voice is breaking up because my computer's basically going crazy.
Goodness.
The screen is shaky. So the question is my current plan sufficient?
Your current plan, whatever it is that you may have already done, just needs to be revisited at least yearly. And then whenever there's a change in your circumstances. So they say if there's a death, say especially of someone you've chosen as one of your powers of attorney or your executor, if there's a divorce, if there's a diagnosis, there's 5 Ds. I never remember all 5. Death, divorce, diagnosis, decade, turning in another decade. You get the idea. You could also do it on your birthday, on New Year's, but you'd be shocked if you haven't looked at whatever you might have drawn up already. If it's been a few years, you might be shocked to look at it and go, why in the world did I pick her? Or you may find that it's all exactly the way you want it, but it needs to be looked at repeatedly over time, and it can be constantly added to. You may realize that nobody has a clue how to get into your financial institutions online because they don't have the passwords. Put somewhere in your documentation, here's where I keep my passwords. Somebody in a class I did not too long ago just said, I just realized no one else has a key to my house. Nobody else in my life would be able to get into my house and find my paperwork because no one has a key or the garage code or whatever. So little things like that, as you go through your day-to-day, think about, what you put into like running your life, paying your bill. How do your bills get paid? Are they on automatic? Do you write checks? All that. Don't have to do it all, but whatever you can compile as far as an exit file will be appreciated by whoever has to step in for you. And then the biggest thing is where you put all this, that as you're gathering it, this ongoing piece of work of yours, somebody has to know where it is. So make sure that your powers of attorney and executor and your kids or your best friend or whoever knows where your file is at, and distribute copies of your medical directives and funeral planning. You can do bunches of paper copies and pass them out. You can do it online. You can, put it all up in Google Drive if that's your thing, and and send that to the people that are important in your life. There's apps on your phone. There's places in the cloud that you can upload to. So it's whatever your comfort level is around technology or just using paper. Paper's fine, but just make sure people have copies of your paperwork so you don't do all this for nothing and end up in the hospital with people making decisions unguided.
Okay. So I really don't have any more questions.
Okay.
Can you see me, by the way, on?
Yeah, I can see.
Okay. All right.
Does everybody else see Larry okay? Yeah, yeah, everybody else
Okay,
sees
good.
Larry.
Audience, what do you think? Do you have any clarification questions? Any
Question.
personal
Yeah.
issues?
So I work in healthcare field with, residents and families. And when you talk about the personal narrative, what comes to mind for me is the 5 wishes. So
Mhm.
what are your thoughts about the 5 wishes? Are we still using that? Is that a good document? Something that holds up in Colorado?
That is a really good question. I don't love the 5 wishes because it's kind of canned, but it would be a great piece to work off of, to put in your own words, your thoughts, because, it may or may not be helpful to family to see, I wish to have a warm washcloth on my head, if I am uncomfortable. I think the 5 wishes also says, I want everyone in my family to make amends and get along, or something to that effect. That's a lot to dump on the family, as you lay dying or whatever. So I like some pieces of it that could guide you, and it could be used as a guide to write your own wishes. There's value in that. The 5 wishes also says that I don't want anyone to do anything to hasten my death. And that runs counter to the majority of people's feelings about medical aid and dying. And so there could be a problem with that, with having that document and then wanting to access medical aid and dying. Anybody else have questions?
Yes, so on the narrative there, do we need to write it out or can it be typed out?
Mm-hmm.
We need to write it by hand, I guess.
No, you can type.
How,
You can certainly do it on the computer, and which then makes it easier for you to go back in and make changes as your life changes. What we think we would tolerate sitting where we're sitting now, I guarantee you will change as you get older and maybe have some physical challenges or whatever. You may decide it's not right. It's not so bad that I have to have somebody help me with this or whatever. I still am enjoying my life. So yeah, that also is a fluid document. You write it out how you feel today about how you want to be treated. And then you'll go back and look at it again in a year or 6 months or whatever. And if it's on the computer, it's super simple to change it up. You just sign it and date it.
sign it by hand, I guess you're saying.
Mhm. Yeah.
So you have to print it out.
Mm-hmm.
Can we electronically sign it somehow?
I know you can electronically sign things. Are you not a paper person? Do you prefer electronic? Oh, sorry, did I touch a sore subject there?
Yes,
There are,
I like paper, but I also like electronics. So.
okay, then you should do it electronically. And I don't think your physical signature is as important as your words. So if you have a Google Drive that's password protected or whatever, and you want to upload your legal documents, which do have to have a physical signature, and then add to that your wishes around dementia and hospice and comfort care and that sort of thing.
Oh, that's what I did. So I could scan or sign the paper copy, scan it, put it into the computer then that way. And that might be, would that be legal or?
Absolutely, absolutely, and then it makes it accessible. And there's a company called DocuBank that you can, well, you have to pay for it. I offer a discount. I think it comes out to, I think it's $99 for 5 years. but it's a place you can upload everything. Then you have a little card in your wallet that tells any medical personnel that, you know, here's the access to my documentation that's floating around in the cloud up there on DocuBank.
Thanks for the idea. And speaking of costs, well, I'd like to have your contact information and what would be the cost? How would you, what are your costs and how would you, what are the hours involved or?
Oh, I work two different ways. I do a workshop that runs 8 weeks long, and including the exit file binder, that's around a little under $300 for that class. And I'm starting another one in, I should know, in March, towards the end of March. But I also work privately with people, and I just go to your, I'll come to your home and we'll go through whatever you've already got pulled together, and then talk about lots of other options and how to tweak things. And I charge $80 an hour for that. And then I charge $65 for this for the exit file, which most people just like it, that it's a simple, it's a 3-ring binder. So it's easy to put the documents in, add more documents, pull things out if you change your mind, put in a new one, drop in your copies of your will and that kind of thing. And it puts everything in one place. So.
Yeah, so you, and where would you recommend people putting this binder? This would be what the children would see, or the executor or whatever after death or something?
Right. You know, it doesn't matter terribly as long as someone knows where that is. So yeah, keeping it visible and not underneath a pile of something is ideal, I guess. And I think Larry, will you send out my contact info?
Yes. Well,
Or should I just,
I think
You wanna
you put it in the chat right now, because I can't,
Oh,
my
sure.
keyboard is not accessible. I can't do anything. And I'm
Okay.
afraid to touch it because I might disconnect the whole call. So
okay,
you put your contact information in the chat right now,
okay.
and then we'll just go give the audience another opportunity to ask some follow-up question, one more question or two more questions.
Sure.
Anyone else?
Sue, this is Carolyn.
Okay, hi, Carol.
I would like to thank you very much. You don't know if you remember, but I called you about a year and a half ago when I was in the middle of some crises here at home. And I so much thank you for the conversation that we had. Another form that I might mention that came out of yours and my conversation was the Colorado Medical Orders for Scope of Treatment form. That
Yes.
is called the MOST form. So for those people who don't know, all you would have to do is Google MOST form, even if you forget the whole long title of what MOST means. And online, you can access this form. What I ended up having to do was I went to, I believe it was either Walmart or Target, and they want it on a neon green color.
Mm-hmm.
So I found the color. I went online, got the form, made my own forms, read it then at home, filled it out, and then took it to our doctor to sign. And it's like you do recommend too, that it be reviewed once a year. That says it right on the form.
Right.
But it steps you through several different sections about cardiopulmonary resuscitation, whether you want it or you don't. Medical interventions, there's 3 categories: artificially administered nutrition, 3 categories, and then who you discussed it with and with your doctor. So it's pretty concise, and that might help some people in trying to narrow down some of their decisions as to what they'd like. And then if you review it once a year, you can always change those decisions.
Carolyn, I knew I recognized your last name. And thank you for bringing up the MOST form. I do tell people once you're in your 60s, 70s, and definitely 80s and above, to have a conversation, actually schedule extra time with your physician to talk about the MOST form. When you are going to be going in anyway, tell the scheduler that you want extra time for end of life planning. And that way the doctor will give you an actual, probably hopefully 15 minutes, and they get paid for it by Medicare and insurance. And this form carries a lot of power because it is signed by a physician. So it is a physician's order. It's not just your wishes or what you'd like. And oh yeah, there's Carolyn's got it. It's Vulcan Green. Your doctor should have these forms in the office.
That's it.
You went through a lot of trouble, Carolyn. You were determined to get this done.
Well, it's not just a physician either, I found out. It can be an advanced practice nurse also, so you can sign it. But it was funny because when we had the discussion with the doctor and went in, the nurse acted like she didn't know what I was talking about. So I more or less educated the doctor's office a little more specifically about this form.
All right.
Larry, I'm so thankful that you came up with this topic for one of your seminars.
Great, thanks, Carolyn.
Yeah. Yeah, but included in the most form is whether or not you would want CPR. And that is that can be a very big conversation to have with your physician, because it really depends on your particular physical state of health, your age, your body, if you've got osteoporosis, if you have other comorbidities, as to whether or not CPR would be appropriate for you. If you don't have a chance of coming back, like surviving it is a physical assault. CPR is a physical assault on your body. If your chances of going through that assault and then being in the ICU, which is the next step for after CPR, you're in the ICU on, ventilated and the whole shebang. If your chances of coming out of that to an acceptable quality of life are not in a percentage that you would agree with, then you don't want CPR. But I can't answer that for you, and you can't make that decision probably on your own either. In your 80s, 90s, maybe. But anyway, that does need to be a decision that's made between you and your doctor, and then officially signed by him, so that it's honored by the paramedics.
Oh, and then the other thing that we learned with it too, and I've had these for years, it's a little red file that we put these forms in on the side of the refrigerator. And a lot of, I think they called it the file of life. And I think people can ask at their fire departments. I got it at some type of a workshop one time when I went, and the fire department was there and they were handing them out. But there's a lot of people, like you say too, this is a subject that's just not talked about, and people don't feel comfortable. But if they can make these arrangements in advance, it's really helpful, because if you have to call 911 and the paramedics come to your house and you have these forms already, then they're right there. They'll look on your refrigerator for them, or in the refrigerator. My mom used to keep hers in a jar in the refrigerator. I don't know where she got that idea from, but anyhow, we as kids, we knew where they were, though, if she needed them.
Yeah, I met with an attorney once who said he'd put a note on the refrigerator, because they do look on the refrigerator, with a little colored ribbon on it, saying that my forms are in the freezer. And he said, so behind the stolies was a Ziploc bag with a matching ribbon. And that's how he felt he could direct the paramedics. The main thing the paramedics are going to be looking for is level of care, and whether or not they're going to initiate CPR or stop CPR if they've already started, and whether or not they're going to take you to the hospital for full bore treatment, or you've chosen to not go that route.